The waves crash against the cliffs of Boulogne. The year is 1804. On the French coast, campfires glow like stars scattered across the night, and above them stands a man who has bent half of Europe to his will. Napoleon Bonaparte, first consul, soon to be emperor, gazes across the channel. Somewhere beyond that restless horizon lies Britain, the stubborn island, the last great obstacle to his empire. To Napoleon, Britain is not just an enemy, it is a vision, an obsession. He sees it as the spider at the center of Europe's web, spinning gold into alliances, paying soldiers to fight in its place, and using its navy to choke French ambition. If he can break Britain, he believes, he can master the world. And so a dream begins to take shape. In Napoleon's imagination, French soldiers storm the beaches of Kent. London falls within days. The monarchy is toppled. The world's most powerful navy kneels to his flag. From Paris to Cairo, from Rome to Moscow, his empire stretches unchallenged. But Napoleon's vision does not end with invasion. If the seas deny him, he will strangle Britain with economics, sealing its markets off from Europe. He will starve its merchants, ruin its banks, and crush the so-called nation of shopkeepers without firing a shot. And if that fails, he will strike at its empire itself. India, the Caribbean, the very veins of wealth that keep the island alive. It is a vision both grand and fragile. For though Napoleon commands the land, Britain commands the sea. Though Napoleon raises armies that conquer kingdoms, Britain wages war with coin, commerce, and cunning diplomacy. This is the story of an impossible dream, Napoleon's grand vision of Britain, a dream that would haunt him, shape his wars, and in the end, help to destroy him. It is the summer of 1804. The cliffs of Boulogne echo with the sounds of war drums and marching boots. Day after day, Napoleon's Grande Armée gathers on the French coast, a massive force of nearly 120,000 men. Campfires burn like stars across the shoreline, their smoke mingling with the salty air of the channel. Flat-bottomed barges bob in the water, waiting for their moment of destiny. Napoleon himself inspects the preparations obsessively. He paces the docks, cloak sweeping behind him, hands clasped behind his back. He quizzes engineers about the strength of the boats. He times soldiers as they scramble on and off the barges, demanding speed, precision, silence. He speaks often of the invasion, saying, "Let us be masters of the channel for 6 hours, and we are masters of the world." The plan is bold, a lightning strike. The French fleet, stationed at Brest, Toulon, and Cadiz, will distract and divide the Royal Navy. If even for a single day the seas can be cleared, Napoleon will unleash his men across the narrow strait. In his mind, he pictures them landing in Kent, sweeping toward London, crushing all resistance. The British monarchy will fall, Parliament will kneel, and the Empire of France will stretch across not only Europe, but the English Channel. But the dream has cracks. The barges, despite Napoleon's hopes, are little more than fragile wooden shells, barely seaworthy against the channel's wild currents. Worse still, across the horizon lurks Admiral Horatio Nelson. Britain's navy rules the waters with iron discipline, its ships of the line towering like floating fortresses. Napoleon waits, month after month, staring across the sea as his army drills. He believes his genius will find a way, but the invasion never comes. In October 1805, at Trafalgar, Nelson shatters the combined French and Spanish fleet. The tricolor flag will never fly over London. The first and boldest vision of Britain, its conquest by force of arms, dies on the waves. Defeat at sea forces Napoleon to rethink. If Britain cannot be invaded, it can be strangled. In 1806, he proclaims the Berlin Decree, the birth of the Continental System. The idea is audacious. Turn Europe into a single fortress. Every port, every market, every road under Napoleon's command is to be closed to British trade. No cloth from Manchester, no sugar from the West Indies, no colonial goods are to enter Europe. Britain, cut off from the continent, will suffocate. Napoleon sells this vision to his allies and subjects as a war of systems. British gold versus French steel. The sea against the land. He imagines warehouses in London overflowing with unsold goods, factories idle, workers rioting in hunger. He believes Britain's commercial heart will stop beating. At first it works. British goods become scarce, smuggling grows dangerous, and neutral nations are forced to pick sides. French industries, especially textiles, swell under protection. Napoleon boasts that he is bringing Britain to its knees without firing a musket. But the blockade has hidden costs. Smugglers slip through everywhere, across the Baltic, through Portugal, even under the eyes of Napoleon's customs officers. Britain adapts with remarkable speed, turning outward to new markets in South America, India, and Asia. Instead of collapsing, British trade expands globally. Meanwhile, Europe groans. French allies like Spain, Holland, and even Russia suffer shortages. Coffee disappears from breakfast tables, sugar becomes scarce, and resentment spreads. Napoleon, rather than breaking Britain, finds himself policing an unwilling continent. The Continental System, meant to starve Britain, becomes a burden that weakens France's empire instead. Yet Napoleon clings to the vision, unwilling to admit defeat. For Napoleon, Britain's true strength lies not on the island itself, but in its far-flung empire. London's power comes from the oceans, from colonies that feed it wealth, resources, and prestige. If Britain cannot be beaten in Europe, perhaps it can be beaten abroad. This vision had roots in Napoleon's earlier adventures. In 1798, long before he was emperor, he led an expedition to Egypt. To the world, it looked like a romantic conquest of the land of the pharaohs. But in Napoleon's mind, it was something greater, a stepping stone to India. If he could cut Britain off from its richest colony, he could bleed the island dry. In Cairo, Napoleon dreamed of alliances with the Ottoman Turks in Persia, of marching eastward through the deserts and striking at British trade routes. His scholars mapped the Nile, his engineers dreamed of canals linking seas, and his generals whispered of empire. Though the campaign collapsed, the vision stayed with him. Later, as emperor, he fantasized about rivaling Britain's colonial wealth. He dreamed of French-controlled sugar plantations in the Caribbean, of strongholds in Africa, of trade monopolies in Asia. His imagination soared beyond the continent, envisioning a global struggle for supremacy. But this vision, too, was shackled by reality. Britain's navy ensured French ships could not move freely. Napoleon's colonies in the West Indies withered under blockade, while Britain's Caribbean possessions thrived. His dreams of India remained a mirage, forever out of reach. Where Britain built a globe-spanning empire, Napoleon remained trapped in Europe, master of the land, but a prisoner of the seas. Napoleon's view of Britain was colored by both disdain and grudging respect. He often sneered, calling it a nation of shopkeepers. The insult cut deep. To Napoleon, Britain produced no Caesars, no Alexanders, no Napoleons. Its glory lay not in soldiers or generals, but in bankers, merchants, and traders. Its armies, small and unimpressive compared to his, often relied on foreign allies. Its strength came from money, but beneath the scorn was admiration. Napoleon understood the true engine of Britain's war machine, finance. Gold flowed from London like blood through veins, funding Austrian armies, Prussian mobilizations, and Russian campaigns. Every coalition he faced was held together not just by fear of France, but by Britain's subsidies. He marveled at the discipline of the Royal Navy, built and sustained not by glory, but by systematic organization. He studied Britain's economy and saw its resilience, its ability to adapt, to survive even the shocks of blockade and war. In private, Napoleon admitted Britain was his most dangerous foe, not because of its soldiers, but because of its system, its commerce, its banking, its empire, all woven into a fabric he could never tear. The nation of shopkeepers became the one adversary he could neither intimidate nor defeat. One by one, Napoleon's visions of Britain unraveled. Trafalgar had destroyed the dream of invasion. The Continental System, instead of crushing Britain, poisoned Europe. His colonial ambitions were smothered by the Royal Navy's supremacy, but the final blow came from his own overreach. In 1812, frustrated with Russia's defiance of the Continental System, Napoleon launched his greatest gamble, the invasion of Russia. Over 500,000 men marched east. Few returned. The empire cracked. From that moment, Britain's patience bore fruit. British gold funded new coalitions. British ships supplied allies, ferried troops, and cut off French colonies. The Peninsular War, fueled by Britain's determination, drained French resources. By 1815, at Waterloo, Britain's redcoats stood at the heart of the army that brought Napoleon down. The irony is sharp. The one nation Napoleon had mocked as weak, commercial, unheroic, was the one that never bowed. It endured, it adapted, and it outlasted him. When Napoleon looked back from exile on St. Helena, staring out at the Atlantic horizon, he must have thought of the island he could never conquer. His vision of Britain, invaded, starved, stripped of its empire, remained only a dream. Instead, Britain emerged from the Napoleonic Wars stronger than ever, its empire on the cusp of global dominance. The 19th century would belong not to France, but to the very nation of shopkeepers Napoleon had failed to break. The story of Napoleon's vision of Britain is not one of conquest, but of defiance. For all his genius, for all his armies and victories, there remained one enemy he could never break, an island fortress, defended not only by warships and redcoats, but by its wealth, its willpower, and its refusal to bow. Napoleon had dreamed of storming its beaches, but the Royal Navy shattered that dream at Trafalgar. He had tried to strangle its trade with the Continental System. Yet Britain's merchants turned their sails outward, building an empire across oceans while Europe suffered under blockade. He had sought to match its global reach, dreaming of India, of the Caribbean, of colonies to rival London's crown. But his empire was bound to the continent, and Britain's fleets patrolled the seas like gods. In the end, the nation of shopkeepers endured. While Napoleon's empire burned out in the snows of Russia and the mud of Waterloo, Britain survived every storm, every blockade, every plan. And when the smoke cleared, it was Britain, not France, that rose to dominate the century that followed. Yet the vision remains powerful. In those restless years, Napoleon forced Britain to adapt, to expand, to become something greater than it had been. And perhaps in that irony lies the truth. Though he could never conquer Britain, he helped shape the empire it would become. From exile on St. Helena, staring out over the Atlantic, Napoleon must have felt the weight of his failure. The seas had caged him, the shopkeepers had outlasted him, and the island had stood defiant to the very end. His dream of Britain was grand, bold, impossible, and in its impossibility, unforgettable. Napoleon dreamed of breaking Britain, but in the end it was Britain that broke him. Yet his obsession changed history. It forced an island nation to build a global empire, and it turned one man's dream into the foundation of another's dominance. History has a strange way of rewarding failure. Sometimes the dreams that never came true shape the world more than those that did. So tell me this, was Napoleon truly defeated, or did his vision simply evolve through the empire that rose after him? Drop your thoughts below. Did Britain win the war, or did Napoleon win the legacy? If this story made you rethink the past, hit like, share it with a fellow history lover, and subscribe for more stories of ambition, empire, and the dreams that change the world.